Then on Sports Central, we go over a college football game preview and prediction on the Week 8 matchup between Kansas State and TCU. Huge matchup for both these teams coming up here in Week 8. You got Kansas State, who is 5-1 and ranked in the top 20 heading into this matchup, and K-State is definitely a team that I consider to be a big contender in the Big 12 right now. And I feel like this team is a bit underestimated as well in a conference that is wide open. And they're taking on TCU, who is the last undefeated team remaining in the Big 12. This team is 6-0 and ranked in the top 10 right now heading into Week 8. We would have seen that coming in the offseason, that TCU is going to be 6-0 heading into Week 8, but here we are, and TCU is a really good football team right now, coming off of 3 straight ranked wins, and they're looking for a 4th in this matchup. So a crucial one for both these teams coming up here in Week 8. We'll be going over a full game preview and prediction on this matchup here today, starting with your team trends. Kansas State beat Iowa State 10-9. Very close, low-scoring matchup there. In Ames back a couple of weeks ago. So K-State is also coming off of a bye, so they've had plenty of time to rest up and get ready for this matchup, which is once again a crucial one for both these teams. But they're 5-1, 3-game winning streak heading into this matchup. Of course, the big turning point of the season to this point for K-State was that Tulane loss. They lost to Tulane, which was a very surprising loss. Turns out Tulane's actually a pretty good football team. They're actually ranked in the top 25 this week. But that was a disappointing loss at the time, especially considering Tulane was horrible last year. And ever since then, I mean, K-State has been an excellent football team, and this team has almost flipped a switch after that loss to Tulane there. But yeah, they're ranked 17th in the country heading into this matchup. TCU just beat Oklahoma State 43-40 in double overtime. Oklahoma State was ranked 8th in the country heading into that matchup. So obviously a huge top 10 win there for TCU, and they've beaten 3 ranked opponents in 3 straight weeks. I mean, this is their 4th ranked opponent in 4 weeks that they're playing. So, I mean, they've really had a tough stretch here, but they've done extremely well, still being undefeated at 6-0 heading into this matchup. Game's be on Saturday, October 22nd in Fort Worth, Texas. So the Horned Frogs are the home team for this matchup, and the kickoff is 7 p.m. Central Time. So we got a nighttime kickoff here for this one. Your spread's going TCU by 3.5. Over-under is 58.5, and your FPI is going TCU as well, 66%. So TCU is favored by a decent margin in this matchup. The FPI is going heavier than the spread is, that's for sure. But series history, Kansas State leads at 8-7. They've won the past 3, so K-State has had plenty of success in recent history, and K-State leads the last 5, 3-2. So the Wildcats have had a decent amount of success in this series overall. Stat comparison, Kansas State is 66th in points per game, 20th in points allowed. They're 116th in passers a game. Adrian Martinez is a good quarterback. You couldn't really say he's a great passer, but he's a really good rusher, and this is a really strong team in the rushing game here in K-State. They're 14th in rush yards a game, and then for yards allowed, 63rd in passing, 43rd in rushing. So overall, not a terrible defense here in K-State. As for TCU, they're 4th in points per game. This is one of the best offenses in the country. They're 68th in points allowed, 42nd in pass yards a game, 9th in rush yards a game. So this is a team that is actually really strong in the rushing game as well. And they're 106th in pass yards allowed, 58th in rush yards allowed. So this is something to keep in mind here, is that, I mean, TCU, their pass defense is terrible, one of the worst in the country in the FBS. And you're going up against a K-State offense that is primarily a rushing team. They're good in the rushing game. They're not very good in the passing game. So you got the 116th ranked passing game going up against the 106th ranked pass defense in TCU. K-State, not a very good passing offense here with Adrian Martinez. That is something to keep in mind here, is that they can't really take advantage of a poor TCU passing defense. They have to go up against the 58th ranked rush defense, which still isn't the best, but nonetheless, that's the main way that Kansas State is able to score points, is in the rushing game. So you got to keep that in mind heading into this matchup. Your recent matchups, K-State beat Iowa State on the road 10-9. They beat Texas Tech 37-28. Beat Oklahoma 41-34. That was the game that really started Oklahoma's huge spiral. Was that win that K-State had over them on the road. I mean, 6th ranked team in the country. Yeah, that was a massive win for K-State there. And Oklahoma since lost 3 games, and they just beat Kansas this past weekend. So we'll see if they can start to turn things around. But I mean, definitely that was a huge win there for K-State, and ever since then they've looked really good. Lost to Tulane once again, but turns out Tulane's a pretty good football team. I think they're a 1-loss team heading into week 8. And then you got Missouri beat them 40-12 as well. TCU, they beat Oklahoma State 43-40 in double overtime, beat Kansas 38-31, gave them their first loss. They've actually given multiple teams their first loss of the season, Kansas and Oklahoma State in particular, leaving TCU as the last undefeated team in the conference. They beat SMU 42-34 and beat Tarleton State as well 59-17. So, I mean, TCU's had a couple of close games, but, I mean, once again, they've played a pretty difficult schedule, and they've done extremely well, once again getting to 6-0 right now. Key points for this one, Kansas State 5-1 defensively. They've been strong offensively. They've shown promise. I mean, you got defensively, this team is allowing 16 points a game, which is actually really good. But on the offensive side of the ball, once again, they just aren't very good in the passing game, averaging 158 pass yards a game, which is, once again, pretty terrible. But they're averaging 244 rush yards a game, so you can see that with Adrian Martinez and, of course, Deuce Vaughn. Deuce Vaughn is an outstanding running back, one of the best in the country. He's rushed for over 650 yards, 3 touchdowns on the season. He's had a really good year with rushing so far, even though the touchdowns are a bit low, surprisingly, for him. But, I mean, of course, you got TCU, who's kind of similar there. They're a really good rushing team, but also, I mean, TCU can attack you in the passing game, too. Max Duggan is a quarterback that has come around so much over the past few years. And he's having a great season so far with nearly 1,600 passing yards on the season, 16 touchdowns, only 1 pick. I mean, if you look back to Max Duggan's first year, I say this every time that I talk about TCU. If you look at Max Duggan's first year as the TCU quarterback, he was probably the worst quarterback, the worst starting quarterback in the Power 5. I mean, he was just straight up terrible. And, I mean, for him to come around as much as he has and to play as well as he is right now is extremely impressive, and it definitely needs to be noted. Yeah, Kansas State here, this is, I'd say, the dark horse of the Big 12. Both teams are dark horses, quite honestly. Both teams really weren't expected, especially TCU, to be this high up in the standings and in the rankings at this point in the season. But, I mean, especially for K-State, I feel like TCU is receiving a ton of attention right now, and K-State is kind of in the background. They're still undefeated in conference, and they're very much still a contender, and this is a huge opportunity for K-State to get a significant win here. But for TCU, the last remaining undefeated team of the Big 12, Max Duggan is emerging as a top-tier quarterback. I mean, that's pretty crazy, once again, considering where he was a few years ago. And, of course, they got the home field advantage, and they've played very well at home this season. And defensively, they're going to need a big game. I think if they can shut down this Kansas State offense, which is a possibility considering their main way of attack is in the rushing game, I think TCU's got a chance here. But that said, let's get to the prediction here for K-State and TCU coming up here in Week 8. And I'm going to go with TCU in this matchup. 31-27 is my predicted final score. I do think we see more of a moderate scoring game here. I mean, both teams are decent on offense. K-State is especially strong on defense, and TCU is especially strong on offense. So in the end, I think TCU, it's going to be a close one. Could go either way, but I think TCU pulls this one off and gets to 7-0. And the main reason, I mean, you got K-State. If Kansas State's offense in the passing game was good, I mean, once again, you're going up against a TCU passing defense that's allowed 264 yards a game, which is terrible. I mean, Kansas State is going to need to throw the ball in this game if they want to have any success. And, I mean, I just don't know with Adrian Martinez being a quarterback that is, I mean, just mainly a rusher. He's not an outstanding passer. I just don't know if Kansas State can take advantage of the TCU defense here. And in the end, I think TCU gets to win 31-27 plus. I mean, the Horned Frogs, I mean, this is a team that I think is very much for real. They're proving people wrong every single week. They've won 3 straight over ranked opponents. And I think they get a 4th here. And so I'm going to say 55% towards TCU. Once again, I think Kansas State is very much capable of knocking off TCU here. I mean, and if you continue to doubt this team, I mean, you got to consider, too, Kansas State literally beat Oklahoma on the road in a night game just a few weeks ago. So it's possible that K-State wins this, but in the end, I'm going to go with TCU in this one, and I'm going to take the under 58.5 for this matchup. But anyway, that said, that's going to wrap it up for today. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this matchup, and I appreciate you guys watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.